We have Mary Erdoes, Marcelo Claure, and Azeem Azhar.
Where do you want us?
Wherever you want.
All right, I'll sit out here.
So all three of them are affiliated with D-Cubed Institute. And I first came across Mary through an FT article 8 years ago when she had said that all MBA students coming into JP Morgan are going to learn how to code in Python. And I was like, I have to get to know her. Because we were, for the longest time, working hard to make sure that that our MBA students were actually literate in terms of data science and in terms of programming. And one of the students I remember almost a decade ago saying that just as accounting is required in our first year curriculum, and nobody wants to actually learn accounting, but we require it. I don't think Shrikant is listening to me. He's written the book on accounting. That's good. Same thing is with Python and coding, that everybody has to learn how to code because that's the language of business. So I got to see Mary there. But Mary, of course, is the CEO of Asset and Wealth Management at JP Morgan. Marcelo Claure is a former student of mine. So I met him through our dean. He, entrepreneur, created a company called Brightstar, then did the T-Mobile Sprint merger, was CEO of Sprint. Worked at SoftBank for a while as chief operating officer and investor, and now runs Claure Group as an investment firm looking at AI. And Azeem Azhar, I've been following his work for a long time. His book, The Exponential Age, is one of the best books thinking about the impact of technology on society and on business. And if you're not listening to his podcast or watching his TV show on Bloomberg, you're missing out. So I'm really thrilled that all three of them are here. And maybe we'll just start with you, Mary, and if you can give a perspective, because you're sort of seeing an interesting segment of the economy, which are the asset managers and wealth managers around the world and in the US, and you're at this large bank. What trends in AI are you seeing that are sort of making you sort of perk up and say that something interesting is going on?
Everything. I mean, I think what we just heard, and the whole reason we're here, is because it would be an understatement to say that we're in an unprecedented time, that every single company everywhere around the world has the possibility of having AI change it. And so thinking about what that means for those of us who are in the investment community, everyone is already obsessed about whether it's hardware or software, whether it's the networks, how you think about the companies that are going to be disrupted, the companies that are going to disrupt, the energy that's required, whether we have nuclear that returns, whether we buy old coal plants that have power that's nearby. All of those things are sort of more obvious, and the communities that we invest in are trying to think through that. What's less obvious is why we're all here, really. And so we were all trained by Michael Porter's 5 forces, and all 5 forces are being either threatened or have a massive opportunity here with AI. And so when I think about who are the companies that I want to invest in outside of the superscalers and the like, you look around this room and you say, I actually want to invest in anyone whose name badge is here inside of this room. Because the people that are here trying to think this through are different than the people who are not here. And for me, what really changed was when Philip and I were asked to be part of D-Cubed. And Philip, my husband, runs Bear Cognition, which is it optimizes using AI for logistics and vendor management and the like for lots of companies. I work at JP Morgan Chase. We have 49,000 technologists. We spend $15 billion a year on technology every single year. We are well steeped in how to make this stuff work for us. But it changed at the event that we came to, which was the board meeting in December. And in December, there was a small group of us that you had sit around with your professors. And we went through some things that just changed my whole perspective on this. It started with Sir Martin Sorrell showing us how marketing and advertising were going to change permanently forever. There was no such thing as a focus group anymore. You were going to have localized Coca-Cola ads in India, as opposed to like someone in New York trying to think about what was going to resonate there. We had Mark Nunnally talk about how Bain was fundamentally changing. If you were a CEO and you didn't have someone who represented AI on your management team sitting right next to you every day, preferably at the age of 27 or 28, who's going to think about disrupting everything, that you weren't going to be able to make it. And back to your Python coding, forget about that. Like, yes, you should probably train people in Python coding, but for the 1,000 new summer analysts that are going to come into JP Morgan Chase this summer, they're going to be prompt engineering, right? And Jen's going to help us to do some of that because we have to change the way that they're thinking. But probably the most change moment that I had was sitting next to Satya, who runs Microsoft, and he sat there with us and he said, here's 2 things that have changed just in the past year. Remember, he's an owner of OpenAI. He's in the heart of everything that's changing. And he said 2 things. Number 1, Bill was our greatest red teamer. He didn't believe in AI. He didn't believe it was going to be an exponential change. This is the guy that created columns and rows. So he was our best red teamer. He kept asking, how is this going to work? And when he changed, the entire company changed. And the second thing that happened, he said to us, you know, it's very strange, but it's December of 2023. And in the year of 2023, I have not been asked for 1 single headcount request. That's crazy. They're in the middle of everything. And I went back to JP Morgan and to my management team and I said, that's it. We have a headcount freeze on anything that's not a front-facing advisor. And we put a headcount freeze in for all technology, operations, risk, legal, compliance, et cetera, why we started to think about how this was going to change. We have our engineering, prompt engineering going to go into the summer. And there's now an operating committee member sitting right next to Jamie that does nothing but AI. And we're sitting there trying to think through all of the things that are going to happen because companies can't change just with the technologists changing. They have to change with leadership from the top. But it can't just be one leader, it has to infuse. And so Philip's Bear Cognition team is here today. I have 22 people from JP Morgan Chase here. My head of risk, compliance, someone writing chat CFO, the head of PR, the head of marketing, the head of operations, the head of technology, because we all have to immerse ourselves in trying to figure this out. So if you say what trends are changing, I don't know, but we're here today to figure that out. And the case study work that Harvard does is probably the single best place that we're going to do that. Because yes, there's a place down the road that has all of this engineering training. And yes, there's a place on the West Coast that does this too. But there's nobody like Harvard in the business school to pull together the business cases that help Marcelo to figure out which companies to invest in and to think about all of us here today just to try and open our minds. How are we going to shape our companies? How are we going to drive either where we invest? Lord Michael is here and has funded one of the chairs here. How does he think about where he's going to put his next dollar of investment? It's going to change based on what happens today. Amazing.
I think we're done. Marcelo.
So thanks for having me here, and thanks for inviting me to be part of theCUBE. I'm a huge believer that potentially AI is the single largest value creation opportunity that we're ever going to experience in our lives. And this AI revolution has the potential to be much larger than any other revolutions that we've experienced. And I like to think that, at least what I'm experiencing, and try to bring in this to life. I'm lucky enough to be involved in a few different companies. You know, one of them, I'm involved in the football world, and I'll tell you a little what is happening there. I'm involved in, I would like to say, one of the biggest disruptors today, which is a company called Shein that's disrupting all the on-demand fashion. Today is probably the largest fashion company in the world in the on-demand. And I'm also involved by being the largest independent shareholder of what is called an incumbent or a legacy company called T-Mobile. And it's interesting to see what we're experiencing, and I'll give you some examples in terms of what we're experiencing. Today, I'm the owner of, I don't know how much of you follow the Spanish football, a team called Girona, which is a team that our payroll is $50 million or 50 million euros. And we get to compete against Real Madrid or Barcelona, who their payroll is 800 million euros. And through the use, and we couldn't just replicate and do the exact same thing they did, so we started playing and experimenting with data and saying, what would happen if we bring this player, and how would the player react in this squad, right? How do you use simulation technology to make bets, and very different than letting your agents or your coaches choose the player. Now we still let them be an important part. I would say they are the co-pilots in this sense. And today, for those of you who follow, yesterday we did something that had never, or last week we did something that had never happened in the history of football. Girona is now going to play the Champions League. We're second in La Liga. We beat Barcelona when we're spending 8% of the amount of money that they're spending. And that is basically the power of data in terms of how you can utilize it. And I'm sure a lot of the teams are going to start following that. So it's great to see how you can achieve the unthinkable by leveraging data and putting it to work and use simulation and other engines that exist today. Then I moved to the world of Shein, which I find today one of the most fascinating companies of our times. Right? Today we design and manufacture 20,000 new products a day. And we do it based on data, we see it based on customer trends, and we do it in less than a week. We can design, manufacture, and ship product in less than a week. And we have a catalog of over 2 million products, and what we serve you is what we know you're going to buy, what you like. We don't serve you 2 million different products. And today is one of the fastest growing companies in the world, and that is a perfect example of an AI native, a company that's been created, a disruptor in this era. And then I moved to the other side, which is T-Mobile, which is today the world's most valuable telecommunications company, but one that's in the process of transforming itself, and we're working together with a few folks here. And this is a fascinating story of a company that didn't believe in AI, were able to convince to bring their entire management team to Harvard, spend a few days with Karim and the whole team here, and now the entire transformation, the entire value creation of T-Mobile will be predicated upon whether we're capable and the management is capable of implementing AI. And there's so much to do there, right? I mean, when you have a company that has tens of thousands of people picking up the phone through our call centers, right? AI is perfect in terms of reducing or enhancing the level of service we can provide by being in touch, by providing that perfect customer care center or customer care service rep that Ethan was talking that actually knows who you are, knows what you want, and so on. And then we're also discussing, the potential implementation of digital twins or Gen AI twins, and that is basically the ability to expand your customer segmentation from a few tens to hundreds of thousands, or not millions, and be able to test your digital messaging on digital twins, and once it works, actually apply it to digital customers. So there's so many things that excites me today. And now the big question, and I'll finish with this, and we've been working through this, is what is going on in the world of AI? How do you invest? How do you make money? How do you deploy capital? And it's fascinating to see the amount of capital that's been deployed in energy, we call it infrastructure, in data centers, the amount that's going on to semiconductors, and the amount that's going on into applications or technologies. But what's quite interesting is there's hundreds of billions of dollars being deployed there. But then what happens to the demand side? How are we going to make sure that this technology is actually deployed either to consumers, that the adoption curve is going to go higher, or more importantly, how are enterprises going to take advantage of this new technology? And I think that is the biggest problem that we have today. There's this amazing technology that's been deployed, but the level of adoption is still very small, and the level of adoption at enterprises are incredibly low. And I think there's a tremendous opportunity today, for the new private equity companies, because if you look at today what is going on in the private equity world, I think this is ripe for tremendous amount of disruption. Private equity made their money mainly by doing what? By leveraging companies and by multiple expansion. Very few private equity returns have been done by actually creating value within those companies. Some say 1/3 of the value. Well, with interest rates so high today, the leveraging is not going to work the same way. And without leveraging, you will not get the multiple expansion. So I think the new private equity firms, the one we're looking at investing in those, are those that are going to have the ability to go into companies and actually helping them put AI into those companies, do AI interventions to help drive the new value of those companies. So exciting times ahead. I think pretty much, as I said before, this is fundamentally the largest value creation opportunity in the history of mankind. Everything will be disrupted, and it'll be interesting to see where do we invest in order to accompany this revolution.
I don't know how you can top that, Azeem. So Azeem is both a historian, an analyst, a thinker, and again, I would just highly recommend you follow him and all the channels, because the density of insights every week coming from Azeem and his team is quite incredible. So Azeem.
No, thank you, Karim, and I'll let you in on a secret. So when we think about investing in the future of AI, we'll start with people and organizations, maybe talk a little bit about what happens then to markets and timing. I've logged thousands of hours on ChatGPT and Claude, well beyond the 10 minimum that you need. And one of the reasons we can produce that density of insights is because we have this unending array of, I used to think of them as graduates who didn't quite get the job at BCG. So they were just in the last round and they didn't get the offer. They're getting better and better, partly because we are getting better at prompting them and agentic strategies and so on. And one of the things that has taught me is that you need to certainly do what Mary suggested, which is leaders need to do their minimum 10 hours and ideally on something you actually care about. And if that is golf or gardening, do it on golf or gardening so you can understand the process. But as a leader, you're too far away from the front line to actually know how you can apply this tool that is so generic and generally capable and yet specialist. And so you also need to put the tools into your frontline workers. And this is something, Karim, of course, you know a lot about. It's about user-centric innovation. But you need that pincer movement from both sides within an organization to figure out how you should invest in the future. And we've heard stories of how quickly companies are turning over to this. I was with my old colleague who's the CTO at Accenture, and he said that within the first 6 months of setting up their Gen AI business, they had $1 billion of business and 1,000 use cases across hundreds of companies in proof of concept. And within that 6-month period, roughly a third of them had already agreed to move to scale deployment, which is extremely fast in enterprise IT. But now let's just think about what is happening with this particular technology. It is about reducing the cost of cognition. It's about reducing the cost of the work that goes on, not just in our own heads, but in our heads collectively. But I'll hold on to this. So in 1975, so just a few years before you were born, Karim, if you looked at the total value of firms on the S&P 500, 83% of it was intangible assets, things that you would stub your toe on if you kicked them. By 2020, 90% of the value is in intangible assets. What are intangible assets? It's brand, it's know-how, it's invention, it's data. It's the stuff, in other words, that comes through cognitive processes. So we've just thrown this technology that will dramatically reduce the cost, the input cost of the main thing that has created value in our public markets in the last 50 or so years. So I think that's a really important thing to think about. You could look at that data 4 years ago, and at that point, 83% of the value in the S&P 500 was in intangibles. So in just a 2-year period, that went from 83 to 90%, right? There's not really a limit to where this can go. And in my work, a lot of my work is about technological learning, and we don't think there are limits to technological learning. So that said, Accenture's seeing this very fast growth rate. 25% of people here are using the most advanced tools, have logged more than 10 hours. So you think things are going really, really quickly, and we know that technology transitions can be fast, right? The start of the 20th century, it was about 15 years to do a technology transition from the horse to the car in a city like Chicago. Smartphone to iPhone was about 7 or 8 years. But even if they're fast, it doesn't mean the transitions are instantaneous. And even if they are happening quickly and we have the benefit of history, it doesn't mean we need to know what comes next. So the last time I was sitting at HBS talking, it wasn't in this building, it was in 1997 at the Cyberposium. And I went back to the market at that time, and just to a point that Marcelo made about infrastructure and chips and where does the value go. So at the start of 1998, I have to just look at my notes here, Amazon's market cap was about $7 billion. So this is 4 years after the Netscape browser. AT&T had a great year, was at $100 billion. and Paramount was valued at $25 billion, because we thought then that the internet was going to be about infrastructure and content, right? Content was going to be king.
Content is king, yes.
Rupert Murdoch set up that business with Delphi and so on in New York. And of course, looking past that, we can see there's a whole class of new winners. And it's not just about revolutionizing industries, which we heard about earlier. It's also about the creation of entirely new industries that we can't predict. Now, Ethan made a really important point, which is, bottom line is no one really knows. But we can't rule out the strong possibility that the real winners will come not just from new entrants, but entirely new industries. And we should bear in mind that in 2001, AOL had just had a 3,044% stock appreciation in just the previous 4 years.
And AT&T remained the same since then.
But yeah, AT&T's but it's worse than that, right? Because AT&T was acquired by SBC, and they renamed it AT&T. So it's like not just one of the Marbles, it's several of the babies, and it stayed the same, right? It's gone nowhere.
Yeah, it's incredible. So, you know, as an academic, I'm always ego surfing, trying to understand what the world is thinking about me. And one of the things I do is I look at Google Scholar and see the citation counts I have. And one of the papers I wrote with my good friend and mentor and colleague, Marco Ianciti, in 2016, is called, and it's now the most highly cited article I've ever written in the HBR. It's called The Truth About Blockchain. There's some truth in that article. That's why it's getting highly cited, or it's being like disparaged by everybody. I don't know. So tell me why this is not a blockchain moment, and that we're not all in the hype cycle. Like, how do I make sense of, like, you know, we all thought blockchain was going to be the thing. I'm sure you wrote some articles about that. You know, Marcelo, maybe you invested in some blockchain companies. JP Morgan did a bunch of stuff in blockchain.
Massive.
So how do I, as we think about investing in AI, what's the counterfactual of blockchain comes in? So I'd love your perspectives on
Well, we are in the hype cycle because technologies always have hype around them because financial capital can move more quickly than project managers can and organizational transformation can, as I think your colleague was talking about that earlier. So you're inevitably going to see that sense of exuberance before you get to productive capital and productive deployment. And I think one of the things that we could prepare ourselves for is those kind of hype attributes. In other words, disappointing trials, maybe stock prices moving in the wrong direction. But I would argue that that's exactly the moment where you have to become leader-like and just work your way through the external noise. Why is it different to blockchain? It's different to blockchain because 12, 13 years after the original Satoshi paper, where we're still looking for real uses of blockchain, we don't really have any. Whereas within a week of ChatGPT coming out, there were dozens of uses, and those are stacking up.
Now, this is fundamentally different. By the way, I think there are 18 of my section mates from Section D, class of '93, who were Marco's students. Okay.
Yes.
So we were tortured by him.
Yes.
And
Where is
everything
Marco?
that he taught us. And so, but we're all here because this is very different. And I think actually the work that you've been doing is probably something that we should all talk about, which is our collective duty to help our companies to use this to make it better. And your work that you've done with T-Mobile, and Shrikant has also been involved there. This is fundamentally different. We're not taking blockchain to like optimize one thing. We're trying to get rid of what Julie Harris, my head of operations, calls no joy work. Like, think of all the work that is done today by people that work for us that is full of no joy. You're a client service rep at T-Mobile, and you wake up in the morning, why is someone calling into T-Mobile? For the same reason that they're calling into JP Morgan Chase for their credit card. Do you think something's going really right and they're excited to call you? Or do you think that they're calling you because they have a problem, something went wrong, please help, et cetera, et cetera? How AI helps all of that, how it pulls up the information right as you're talking to the client, how it can tell you exactly where the person is, why it's happening, trigger the response, send the email out, have everything right at their fingertips so that it's not no joy work, so that you're transforming those people. Because, you know, the saying, right, AI is not going to take your job, the person that's using AI is going to take the job. Well, actually, you know, it's not the company that is using AI that's going to disrupt the company that's not. It's the management teams that are infusing themselves in using AI that are going to disrupt the management teams that are not. And that's what you all have done. But you talk about it from a social responsibility standpoint. I think it's one of the most important things that we all need to do to get rid of the no joy work, just as a starting level. For then everything else AI can do to help us get better, help us to not just do the regular optimization, but actually start to be, instead of the co-pilot, the pilot, and start to take us to new places and rethink entire work patterns and what does the client want, rather than like how we set ourselves up in all these different silos in the way that we built our companies.
I think this is very different, right? And I'm guilty of having been an investor in a company called FTX. I'm one of those that publicly admitted and said, I am never going to invest in anything that I don't truly understand. But all my colleagues in venture, they all invested. I was the last guy standing, and I remember sitting and saying, am I the only dumb guy in the room that don't understand what these people do? So let's just invest. So I've learned my lesson, and I can tell you that the complete opposite happens in the world of AI. I mean, we can see real use cases that generate real value, and we see it in companies that are adopting AI, and they're huge differentiators, and those are the companies, in my opinion, that will win. I think there will be a lot of companies that don't adopt AI. And somebody asked me the other day, a CEO came to me and said, hey, Marcelo, is AI going to drive me out of business? I said, no, your competitor that's going to use AI will drive you out of business. You won't drive your business. You won't drive yourself out of business. And I've seen it pretty much in every industry that we're in. And I look at the big differentiator of why I'm so excited about this. You know, all of us who've been through the internet world, we lived an incredible moment of disruption. But what really got disrupted with the internet? E-commerce got disrupted. We got Alibaba, we got Amazon, we got others that changed some of the patterns that we use for shopping. And then advertising got disrupted, right? I mean, you look at the creation of Facebook, Google, and all of them, and at the core, their advertising business, that's where they drive their revenue. But really, the way we educate ourselves hasn't changed. We still teach the same curriculum. Doesn't matter if you're bright or you're less bright. The way we treat disease, the way we go to a doctor is exactly the same thing. I mean, you know, the level of misdiagnosis, it's crazy. I mean, your primary care physician will misdiagnose you, depends who you ask, between 30 to 50% of the times you go there, they're diagnosing incorrectly, they're giving you the wrong drugs, and life moves on. And you cannot expect anything different from them because they're limited to the amount of patients or the amount of knowledge they have. AI has the ability to massively change the way we educate people. Hyper-personalized education will come. To me, AI will be the big equalizer where in emerging markets where people don't have access to education, we'll have a chance to be educated as others. AI will change the way we treat disease. AI will change the way we bring vaccines, the way we do so many different things. So I do think that this is absolutely the biggest change that it has ever happened in mankind. And we're so lucky to be alive and be part of this the next 20, 30, 40 years of the biggest disruption that any civilization has ever experienced.
To that, I mean, I think that what Marcelo describes is really, really plausible. We tend to focus a lot on the large language models because they're the ones that we can touch and feel, and they speak to us in our terms. And you know, Mary, you made the point about the kinds of jobs that we wonder should these actually be done by humans at all. They're done by humans because the technology has not been sufficient, and there's a whole class of work that can be improved as a consequence of this. And I think we've seen that with automation, even in IT. I think if anyone worked in IT, you may remember there was a job called the sysadmin, and it was quite thankless. And sysadmins don't exist as much anymore. They're called DevOps. They're a much higher quality class of work, and many organizations transition their staff from one to the other as the technology improved. But there's a whole series of other AI tools that are being developed that speak to some of the things that you talked about. So taking the technical architecture of that drives the large language model, the transformer, and applying it to biological data, so metabolomics, genomics, epigenomics, microbiome data, and other markers, construct a foundation model that is analogously to everything that there is to do with a person and disease representation that ChatGPT is to the example that Ethan showed us earlier. And that part of the investing cycle, we're still in the very, very early stages. Those companies are still being founded and formed, and we really don't know what the impact of those technologies would end up being. And so it does go well beyond just the sort of the generative AI on text that we've been talking about this morning.
So, one of the things that we learned, from the software business and then the internet business and the mobile phone business was this notion of network effects and winner-take-all businesses, right? That you have these near monopolies emerge just because of the economics of the technology and the network effects that were put into play. As the three of you look ahead and thinking about investing in AI, is this going to be a winner-take-all business? Are we going to have a winner-take-all like Shein, show up in fashion? Will there be winner-take-all in large language models? Will there be winner-take-all in finance? Or what's your sense around that? Because part of this is we have to make some bets on who the winners are. And of course, again, as you sort of discussed, in 1998, we would not have known. It's hard to tell, but if you understood what network effects, you might be able to figure some things out.
Right.
Would love your perspectives about, are these all winner-take-all businesses, or is this a different era?
It's absolutely not winner-take-all, but the winner-take-alls are going to win first, right? So, and they are. They just have more. They have more money. They have more resources. They're moving faster, and they're well on their way.
Yeah.
But everyone that's here in this room and those dialed in are well on their way to disrupting each and every one of the industries. And getting there first is going to be one of the most important things to move as fast as possible. When you just went through the worker and the types of things that you're doing. Just imagine if you run a hospital and you don't have the ability to give the infrastructure to a doctor to be able to not have to write up their notes, to not have to send out the stuff, so that each of their appointments is followed by 30 minutes of doing this and 20 minutes of following up this and getting on the portal and doing all these old-fashioned things. You're just not going to go to that hospital, right? And we'll hear from Stefan about all of the customized work that you're going to do to be able to know the cancer genes inside your body and be able to cure. Are you going to go to another company that's like still futzing around with the? No, you're going to go to these places that are giving you the ability to use those tools, and it's the great equalizer. You can do it in any country. You don't have. You will learn a different way. You will be able to just ask the system in a human way. You won't even have coding at some point in some of these languages that our children are still being taught in schools. You'll be able to have it in the human language, and it just opens up the world for everybody. But so the companies that are going to win or are going to lose, it's all going to depend on who moves fastest, which management teams are infused in it, and you can't just outsource this to people that you think are going to be able to figure it out. You have to constantly reimagine, what does the customer want, and how am I going to give it to them in a completely new and different way, as opposed to the way that it's been set up. That's hospitals, that's financial institutions, that's coffee shops, that's everything that you can imagine. And I think the opening session that we just had just opens your eyes. And the greatest thing about this whole system is it doesn't get tired of you asking it questions. You can ask it questions all night long. They don't get mad at you. They don't get offended. You can tell it to stop using the exclamation point with you and tell you how great you are, because eventually that becomes annoying. And when you do tell it, it learns, and it stops doing that to you. Right. And so it becomes customized to talk to you and work for you, so that you as the leader can take your company to a different place.
Yeah. So, I love that it just makes me smarter. And I will share a quick story. 2 weeks ago, I was supposed to meet a president of a country, a very charismatic leader. I was actually very nervous because this could go either way, right? And I actually went to.
I see who you roll with. Okay, yeah. just so you know, presidents of countries.
So I figured, and I said, let me play in the plane. I said, let me play with it. I said, what sort of words should I use? And what can I say to this president for him or her to like me a lot better? And then the conversation started getting pretty interesting with my AI buddy. And at the end, I said, just make it easy for me. Write me my introductory paragraph that I should start talking with this president. At the end of the conversation, he looked at one of his cabinet members and say, this guy knows more about my country than most of the people in this country, and we need more people like him. And,
you and your AI buddy.
And it's truly remarkable if you think about it. I mean,
well, whenever I go see Shrikant, I'm always asking ChatGPT, okay, like, can you show me some Gandhian values as to how I should talk about that? So.
And it's remarkable how basically it can do something like that to take into context what were this president's last speeches, what does he or she care about, what's in his or her mind in that specific time, and how you can start a conversation like that that actually led to a better effect than I ever thought is possible. So to me, it's just how we can enhance our life, because the beauty of what's happening to us is, I call it the largest value creation, but not only going to create economic value for some people, it's also going to make our life better. We're going to live longer, for sure, right? As we look at what is going on today in longevity and the different things of sequencing and how AI is going to help us treat disease by utilizing, by replicating our bodies molecule by molecule. There's so many advancements that this is going to do, not only to, again, financial value, but to the quality of life. And then going back, is there a winner takes all? I think not this time. I think this time the incumbents who are well positioned to leverage this technology is not going to let it happen again. That happened in the past I think there's a lot of amazing incumbents that today, they have the power, they have the data, they have the management teams. And I think those that are able to adopt AI and be able to deploy it in specific functions in their companies, I think those might actually be the winners. Because myself as an investor, it is so hard to choose who are going to be the AI winners, because this reminds me of the early ages of internet investing, where everybody used to be a technology company, everybody was an internet company. And if you look today, there are very few winners that actually won the internet game. And I think the same thing is happening in the AI world. You cannot go to a single place. I remember I was in Davos last year, and I think even the coffee shop was an AI coffee shop company. So everybody's now an AI company. So
it increases the value greatly if you insert those two letters.
But not anymore, because I honestly think that the big winners, where the value will be derived, at least in the world of investing, will be in those incumbents who are able to use the market power that they have, who are able to use their assets that they have in order for them to leverage their assets, utilize AI to create more value, more profitability, new business models, reduce cost, and so on. So I don't see this a winner takes all at all in this specific time of investing.
Azeem, you're an investor as well, so.
I am. I missed all of the big AI companies and all the big internet companies as well, so maybe not a great investor. But if you look back over 100 years of US stock market data, 27,000 public companies or so, you'll see that the returns are highly, highly concentrated. That's something in the order of 1%, less than 0.4% of all firms accounted for, I forget right now, 60, 70% of all the stock market returns in that 100-year period. But they were highly concentrated on the core general purpose technologies of the time. So a whole bunch of them relate to oil, whether it's the oil companies or the car companies or the electricity companies. Those were founded at the start of the 20th century. And then the second tranche really relate to the silicon chip, in which I include the internet companies. So if we think AI is a general purpose technology, there is a reason to suggest there might be new value creation. I'm slightly on the fence about whether the value accrues to the existing dominant firms for a couple of reasons. So the first reason is that the reason that they accrued that value was really to do with network effects, right? Whether it's Microsoft's platform effect or Amazon sitting between a two-sided market. And it's not clear that AI systems naturally lend themselves to network effects, because that's always about the two-sided piece. then the counter argument to that is that wherever you have businesses that build their value from intangibles, those markets are really hard to enter because they are high fixed costs to get in, and then you have something that you can exploit mercilessly. But we know that AI reduces the cost of producing the intangibles, so does that advantage go away or not? And then I think the third thing is that you're absolutely right. I mean, Microsoft is awake today in a way that it wasn't awake around the time of the internet in 94, 95, right? It took Gates's
It's stunning how fast they've moved.
They've moved so fast, right? And it's not just Microsoft, it's the other big tech firms, and the core technical requirement is something they have in spades, which is data and compute. On the other hand, regulators are much more aware of what's going on, which is why they have tied themselves into knots with these very strange relationships that should be acquisitions but aren't. So where I end up on this question is, I don't think that they will, for as much to do with the regulatory environment, be able to naturally extend their dominance in the way they have shown it over the next 20 years. Not that they'll stop being dominant or important, but that it creates air it creates air for other companies to emerge and become trillion-dollar winners over the next decade.
Great. So one of the insights I got from you, Mary, was this notion that it's not about winner take all, but first mover advantage, and this first mover advantage in adoption. So my question to the three of you in the last minute is, what should leaders do in accruing this first mover advantage? What have you seen work and not work, both from your perch at JP Morgan, but also in the companies you interact with?
Yeah, I would just say two things that I think I've taken away from all the work that you've helped JP Morgan to do, and that we keep learning from all of the companies that you collectively bring together, is first of all, just on the regulatory front, and especially from the Wharton presentation that we just had, where it showed the grading versus something else. We keep having this weird process where we're holding ourselves against some standard that is not a human standard. We're saying, oh, we can't allow it to use AI because it's not getting things 100% right, or it's having some hallucinations or whatever. Like, have you ever met some of the employees? That happens a lot. And so it's not like that's worse. So the first thing is we can't be afraid of what it is. And then the only ingredient that I have found in the companies that we've been investing in, whether it be public or private, and then the things that I'm seeing working inside JP Morgan Chase or not, is one thing, and it's curiosity. And it's insatiable curiosity. And every one that I find that has it, and my team that's here today has it in spades, like that, that's what you want to look for. Those are the companies, you're just interviewing them, and you're not looking for whether they mention the word AI in your 10Q or in your 10K. You're looking for that sense of, do they have that insatiable curiosity to take this to another level? Because in fact, that is what AI is. It's a layered approach to getting to a new space, and that's what it's going to take.
So having grown up in the wireless business, I've seen a few technology changes, right? I come from the days where Nokia and BlackBerry existed, and they actually didn't take...
I want my BlackBerry back.
Didn't take a threat. didn't take, I remember sitting with Jim Balsil, who was the CEO of BlackBerry, the day the iPhone launched, which is very similar to what happened here, right? And he basically looked at me and said, oh my God, who's going to be the imbecile who's going to want to type in a glass keyboard? And I look at companies today, and it all begins with leadership. And the leaders that are willing to adopt this technology and spend the time putting change management into effect, and actually making it part of their daily operating system of a company, I believe those are going to be the winners. The ones that are on the side saying, let's actually run a few experiments and let's see where the chips fall, those are the companies that I'm taking my money out as fast as I can. And you're going to see a lot of that. I think we're going to see a lot of strategies that we saw, like Nokia, that had an 80% market share that today doesn't exist, or BlackBerry or Motorola, that those were like impossible companies for them to even think that they won't exist. And I think we're going to see a lot of that here. Companies that think that this is just something that's going to pass, that we shouldn't change the way we work. I think there'll be a lot of companies who will go out of business, and we will see a lot of companies who are going to thrive, and it'll be fascinating to watch.
I'll build on the point about curiosity and leadership here, and this is the way that you address this. It's so easy to say, let's start with customer service. Why not start with something that actually really moves the dial for your business? Why don't you trust your people sufficiently to go straight into the core value drivers and explore those? And I would just quote from a speech that was made at a different university, which is...
There are other universities?
This one won't offend you, Karim, don't you worry. It's simply this, choose to do things not because they are easy, choose to do them because they are hard.
Great. Let's thank our panelists. So grateful for all of them. Thank you.